financial crisis, the Fed responded by making credit available to non-banks as well as banks. Later, Congress appropriated funds for the U.S. Treasury to boost the financial system. Did the Fed bail out the financial system? It depends on how one defines a bailout. The dictionary says that a bailout occurs when someone provides financial assistance to a person or business that cannot pay its debts. But that definition is pretty broad. Suppose I don't have enough money to pay my $1,000 credit card bill. So I go to my local bank and take out a home equity loan, which I use to pay off the credit card bill. Then I pay off the home equity loan over the next several years. The bank loan qualifies as a bailout under the dictionary definition because it saves me from defaulting on my credit card debt. But there is nothing wrong with such a loan. The bank isn't doing me a favor, it's charging me interest and making a profit. Suppose instead I go to my rich uncle and explain that I can't pay my debts. My uncle hands me $1,000 in cash and tells me to give it to the credit card company. Or he gives me an interest-free loan, knowing that I'm a deadbeat and unlikely to repay him. The uncle not only bails me out according to the dictionary definition, he bails me out, some might say, in a morally questionable way. He relieves me of my responsibility for my debts, perhaps teaching me that there are no consequences to my actions. He incurs a loss and does not expect to be paid back. Knowing that my uncle will rescue me, I may continue to act in a financially irresponsible manner. Now, consider a classic LLR loan during a financial crisis. A bank or other financial institution cannot borrow money because no one is willing to lend. As its bills come due, it faces bankruptcy. The bank possesses numerous assets that it could sell off to raise cash to pay its bills. But no one wants to buy those assets because everyone is hoarding cash. If the bank nonetheless sells them at fire sale prices to the handful of hardy souls who have cash and believe that the financial crisis has peaked, it will be driven into insolvency because the fire sales do not raise enough cash to pay its debts. Instead, the bank applies for a loan from the LLR, using its assets as collateral. The LLR can lend because it has an infinite time horizon. It doesn't matter how long it takes for the bank to pay it back, because the LLR can keep itself in business by printing money, subject to some vague macroeconomic and political limitations. If all goes well, the bank will either pay back the LLR with interest or lose its collateral to the LLR, which the LLR can resell to the market once the crisis ends. The scenario is much closer to my first example than to my rich uncle case. The only difference is that in the first example I go to a private bank, while in the financial crisis the financial institutions sought loans from the government. But they did so only in the sense that if someone's house is on fire, that person calls the fire department rather than looks for a private company to douse the fire. No such private company exists. The government is a kind of credit monopolist during a financial crisis. If the LLR is operated correctly, the government should make rather than lose money, as in fact it did during the crisis of 2007 through 2008. Of course, it need not work out this way. If the LLR makes loans to insolvent institutions and against inadequate collateral, it will lose money, possibly a great deal of money. Economists distinguish between the pure type of liquidity support of solvent banks, which I have just described, and the rescue of banks that have been badly managed and driven into insolvency. Such banks make bad loans that are not repaid. During the S&L crisis of the 1980s, many savings and loans made bad commercial loans and were shut down. The government paid their depositors. Because the liability to depositors greatly exceeded the value of the bank's loans, the government lost billions of dollars. The S&Ls were not bailed out, and the government